Howdy folks, this is Dave from GroundCloud, and the purpose of this video is to show you step by step how to set up a brand new iPad out of the box, assuming you will not be using the GroundCloud MDM solution. So MDM stands for Mobile Device Management, and so this is the case where you're not using that. For example, you got your iPads from another vendor from AT&T, or you got it from someone off of eBay, whatever. So, and you're not going to be using our MDM setup and enrollment. So for that case, what you want to do is get it out of the box and start it up. The first thing after you power it up, it's going to give you sort of this hello in multiple languages. So we're just going to hit the home button here. This is what's called the home button over on the right. In my case, or on the bottom if you're holding it up. To advance it, now I'm going to pick English. I'm going to say I'm in the United States. It's going to ask me to pick a Wi-Fi network, which I would seriously advise you to do so that you don't burn up cellular data as you are installing apps and doing the configuration or running any operating system updates, that sort of thing. So if you don't have cellular and you're in a hurry, you can use if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can use cellular connection, but again, that typically is going to be costly. So if at all possible, I'm going to advise you to use a Wi-Fi network. So I'm going to use this one here that we have in the office that does not require a password. So we're going to let that connect to that open password Wi-Fi network, and we get this message saying it's going to take a few minutes to activate your iPad. Okay, we get this questions about location services. We definitely want that. So we're going to hit Enable Location Services. For Touch ID, we don't want that. So we don't want to have to limit the device to one person. So we're just going to hit Set Up Touch ID Later and hit that. And the iPad's not going to like that, so I'm just going to confirm that by hitting Continue. All right, again with a passcode. There's no need for a passcode because everything is going to be contained in our app and on the cloud. So we really aren't concerned about data security on the iPad itself. It's all in the cloud. So we're just going to disable the passcode by going right here where it says Passcode Options. I'm going to tap on that. And the bottom choice, it says Don't Add Passcode. And again, it wants you to confirm that. Continue. Don't want a passcode. Okay, so next screen, apps and data. We're going to choose set up as new iPad. Okay, for an Apple ID, what you're going to want to do here is for the very first iPad that you get, you're going to want to create a brand new Apple ID. Do not use a personal Apple ID if you have one, because that means if you do that, all of your texts and potentially emails and everything else will get shared to your driver iPad. So I'm guessing you don't want that. So you're going to want to create one new Apple ID and then use that same brand new Apple ID for all of your iPads. And it's really important that you do that. So for example, it enables you to independently track the location of each iPad individually. So it's free and it definitely has value. So I'm going to tap here where it says don't have an Apple ID. Let's see if I can actually tap it this time. Okay, so and under the Apple ID screen, I'm going to click on or tap on Create a Free Apple ID. Okay, so it wants to know how old I am. So I don't really care if Apple knows exactly how old I am. So I'm just going to say, let's call myself a New Year's baby. We'll say January 1st. Let's get up to there. Doesn't really matter. January 1st, let's see. What shall we be? How old shall we be? How about 72? How about that? Okay, doesn't really matter. I'm going to hit the next over here. And my name. Okay, so what I would advise here is to put in your company name. So let's say I'm going to put in Wendigo Logistics. Don't use that. Put in your own company name there. And next. Okay, for email address, I'm going to say get a free iCloud email address. Nice and easy. Let them create that for me. So now I need to pick a name here that doesn't already exist. So let's try this. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I just tried that. And do I want Apple News and Announcements? Not really. So I turn that off, and I'm going to hit the next button. And we get a confirmation, so that means it is available. So I'm going to hit yes, continue. Okay, now I have to create some kind of a password. Looks like it's got to be 8 characters, include a number, uppercase and lowercase. So let's just create something. Okay, after I created a password, now I have to create some kind of security questions. First pet, let's just say, whatever. Just doesn't matter what this is, you just got to remember them if you forget your password and you can't recover it. So, I said my first pet was Spot, even though I never had a dog or a cat named Spot. Let's see, dream job. Of course, we all want to be a contractor, a contracted service provider, right? So that'll be our dream job, security question. Hopefully last one here. Okay, name of your first boss. Who should that be? Let's just create something here. I'll say David. Okay, we get to terms and conditions. We'll agree to that. All right, now it's creating this new Apple ID. Okay, so now we get a question about should we set up Siri? So I don't think we really need that. So at the moment, we're just going to hit don't use Siri. You can always set that up later. Analytics, I'm going to say don't share just because I want to minimize data usage. So we'll be a little bit unfriendly there. Okay, we get to this welcome to iPad screen. So we'll just hit get started. All right, so now we have come to your base level home screen. And this is just what it looks like under the initial configuration. Let's just see, we've got an update 1 over here. Notice that under settings here, Apple really wants us to turn on two-factor authentication. For me, for the moment, I'm just going to say not now. If you want to check to see if the operating system is up to date, you can say over here on General and look at Software Update. And sure enough, there is an update there for iOS 11. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you wanted to update that operating system to that latest and greatest, that's where you would do that. One thing, though, that I definitely want you to configure on the iPad is this. Notice over here on the Settings app, what I did is I pulled down and it reveals the search bar up top. I just tapped in that search bar and I'm going to type in the word lock. This one right here where it says auto lock, display and brightness. I'm going to tap on that because what we want to do is set the auto lock to never. And the reason for that is so that as your drivers are driving down the road, the screen of the iPad won't go black on them, won't power down. So we're going to set that auto lock to never. That means the screen is always going to be on. Now, these should be mounted and cased and also supplied with power connected to a power port or hardwired. And that way the iPads always have power, the screens are always on. But just so you know, you can always turn the screen off manually by hitting the side button over here. If I just do that, then the screen will stay off, or you can power down the unit as well. Again, to turn it back on, I can just hit that side button or hit the home button. And when I hit that home button, we just come right back to where we are. Okay, now what we want to do, what I highly, highly, highly recommend is to enable restrictions on the device. So to do that, and what restrictions means is it will limit what drivers can do with the iPads apart from your permission. So the way that we can easily find that is, again, we go to that search bar in settings. Remember, I just pull down, tap in the search bar, and I just start to type in restrictions, R-E-S-T. There we go. We find that under restrictions. What I want to do now is hit this little button here that says enable restrictions. And it's going to encourage me to add a passcode. So for now, I'm just going to add 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to confirm it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just give it some 4-digit code that you will remember. And what we want to do is disable a number of things here because drivers have no business using these things as they are driving. So most importantly, assuming that your drivers are not going to be accessing and downloading manifests themselves, what I would highly recommend is to disable the web browser Safari. That way, there's no temptation to pull up YouTube or any kind of streaming music services on Safari while they're driving. Of course, the issue is primarily safety. We don't want any drivers distracted. Also, of course, the issue is cost, because if you don't do this, if you don't restrict access, then much cellular data can be burned, and that hits you strongly in the pocketbook. For the camera, no harm in that. Might as well leave that on. You never know. They might need to document something. We can leave the camera on. But I would turn off many other things like Siri, FaceTime, AirDrop, iTunes Store, music, bookstore, podcast, news. Now, about installing apps, deleting apps, we want to leave those on. We can turn off in-app purchases, but leave on the installing apps and deleting apps. Rest assured, your drivers cannot install any apps without your Apple ID password, so they won't be able to do that. The reason why we want to leave on installing and deleting apps is so that we could potentially enable the auto updates of apps like GroundCloud. Also, there's a very rare circumstance where data within the app itself gets corrupted, so that would enable a driver, even remotely, to delete and then reinstall an app, and so therefore you want to leave this on. Again, go ahead and disable in-app purchases. Allowed content, we don't care about that, they won't get access. Privacy. Okay, Game Center, sure, we can turn all of those things off down here. And so, just like that, now that I go back out, and I'll go back to the home screen, notice that the Safari web browser was there, and it's now gone. The next thing you can do is actually delete apps that will not be used. And the way you do that is you press and hold on an app, and notice everything kind of starts jiggling. And then in the upper left corner, there's an X on there. So if I hit each X there, I get a confirmation to remove apps like this. So I'm going to remove all of these apps here, like the home, TV. Certainly don't want that. Now, notes, you know, that's up to you. If you want to have your drivers be able to add notes into their app, but I'm just going to delete these things like this, reminders. Now, earlier I deleted the calendar, but you might make that choice to leave that enabled and implement a company calendar that is shared amongst drivers and amongst you. So that might be a feature you might leave on. This Maps one, we definitely want to leave that one there because there's an option to use that in conjunction with our app. Now notice not all apps are even deletable, like the Photos app, App Store. They don't even have an X by them. Mail, most likely you want to delete that unless you wanted to configure that. iTunes Music, we'll delete that. And so what we can do is take this, we can get some of these out of the way. Notice that there's another screen here. I just went over here. We don't care about tips. We'll remove that. And find friends. We'll get rid of that. Okay, so really that's about as much as we can do. So to stop that app deletion mode, they're no longer, so that way they're no longer jiggling, we'll hit the home button. Okay, next up we want to go to the App Store and get our apps loaded. So we're just going to tap on the App Store icon. Looks like an A made out of popsicle sticks. Okay, the first time you open it, we're just going to hit that continue button. And then what we're going to do is lower right corner, we're going to tap on the search tab right there. Then we're going to put our finger right on, tap on where it's the search bar there. Keyboard comes up, and we're going to type in ground cloud. Okay, there it is, ground cloud. I tap on that, and we want to hit the get button. We have to confirm by hitting install. First time we do this, we have to actually enter in our Apple ID password. Sign in. That's a good thing because that means that drivers cannot install apps apart from your permission. Now, the very first time you do this, it's going to say this. Apple ID has not yet been used in the store, so we have to hit review, and essentially we just have to acknowledge some terms by Apple, grant them access to our entire estate and children and everything else, so we'll just agree to that, say next. Agree to terms and conditions, got to hit that little slider bar, make it green, then hit the next, and next, and of course Apple is insisting on a particular title, so it's Mr. Wendigo Logistics to you, Apple. Subscribe to Apple emails, I don't care about that, I'm going to turn that off and hit the next. And then payment method, no, let's not do that, let's keep that at none, and hit next. Okay, it's looking for a billing address, even though it has no card. So, okay, fine, Apple, we'll say 123 Main Street. I'm just making up something here, it doesn't matter. And we'll keep that in my current city of Maple Grove, Minnesota. And phone, why do they need that? Let's just say 8675309. All right. Young people won't get that. The zip code didn't like that. So 55, oh, I got too many fives in there. 311. Okay, Apple ID completed. So only have to do that the very first time you use it. Again, let's try it again. We'll hit the get button. Again, install. And we get to authenticate once again. Sign in. Okay, so now we have our Ground Cloud app installing. I'm going to say this, require password for additional purchases. It says either always or require after 15 minutes. I'm going to choose after 15 minutes because I'm going to install another app here. So while that's installing, I'm going to go back up to the search bar here, and I'm going to tap in, I'm going to install this Waze app. Waze Navigation Live Traffic. So this is optional, but this can be a very useful app that we integrate with. For example, if you're in an urban area, this app does a great job of navigating around traffic jams and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit install on that guy. Save password for free items. I'm going to definitely say no on that because we don't want drivers to be able to access the App Store and then get free apps to install. We want to, again, have that password be required so no apps are installed against your knowledge. Okay, so those are the two apps that we now have. What I'm going to do is to bring those two apps down into the dock because we're going to use them frequently. So I just press and hold, drag it over, comes into the dock like this. This thing here called Files, we don't really care about that. So here, again, we'll bring in our Waze app over here. And then lastly, maybe we'll bring in the Apple Maps app as well, just to get it in the dock. That's how you can do that. All right, so from that point forward, you are configured. And so here's the last thing that we recommend as far as setting up the iPad to minimize data usage. Okay, what I'm going to do now is completely outlined on our website if you go under support and then frequently asked questions, there is a question there that says, how can I minimize cellular data usage on my iPads? And from that little article, here's what I'm going to do. So I've already deleted every app off of the iPad that I possibly can that I know my drivers will not need or shouldn't be using. So there's another couple of things that I'm going to go into iOS settings right there, and under General I'm going to go to Background App Refresh right here, and I'm going to turn all of these off except for Ground Cloud. The next thing we're going to do is go under, we already did the restrictions, so we got all of that. Alright, the next thing we're going to go under cellular data here. So that's over here, right there, it says cellular data. And what we want to do here is to turn most things off. Now we're going to leave App Store on just because if in case there's an emergency and if the driver needs to delete and reinstall our app, it's a very rare condition, but support might ask them to do that. So we're going to leave App Store on, but many other things here we're just going to turn off for all of these things. Now Find iPhone, we're going to turn that off because drivers don't need to use that app. iTunes Store, we're going to leave it on for Apple Maps just in case that could potentially be used in the future. We're going to turn it off for all these other things here. Settings, weather. Okay, system services, there's nothing to turn off there. Wi-Fi assist, we're going to turn that off. And iCloud Drive, definitely turn that off. Reset statistics, I recommend that just to get everything cleared out. So the iOS app will actually track the exact data usage that of your cellular statistics here. So under, and you'll notice right here, Ground Cloud isn't even showing up. That's because we haven't launched it yet. So if I launch Ground Cloud for the first time, we get a login screen like this. And now, if I go back, now make sure when we launch the app here like this, we should get a request to use cellular, the location and cellular data. So we want to check that real quick if we missed it. So if we go under Privacy and Location Services, we see Ground Cloud here. We want to make sure that's set to always. Make sure that's always set like that. Okay, and then the other thing for notifications, that all looks fine. Okay, so that should do it. Now, with restrictions enabled, we now have the iPad locked down. We have the cellular statistics reset, and the only apps that are allowed to use it are what's defined in here. And lastly, if you see a dialog coming up about using the location, always say always allow. If you see a little thing that pops up for Ground Cloud and say allow notifications to give, again say allow, and then you're good to go. So that wraps up our configuration. This iPad is ready to go. Now, the good news is if you have other iPads, leave this one on, and then the next iPad that you power up and give it the same Apple ID, it will actually recognize this iPad and say, do you want to grab the settings and everything from this iPad? And go ahead and say yes, and it will do a lot of the work for you. And that way you can just go back and double check those other statistics. Again, this is all for not using our MDM solution. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions, be sure to contact us at support@gogroundcloud.com. Thank you and be safe out there.